YouTubing friends. So here we are again, out on a rainy, drizzly day in Surrey, and the day I'm doing the narration is a rainy, drizzly day in Sussex, and I can hear the rain falling on the Home Office. But anyway, I'm sure there was a summer, but I can't really remember it now. Anyway, that's England for you. So we are out on the Harley Livewire. Now I know I call it Harley. Harley sort of farmed this part of their business off a couple of years after they started, I believe. They own about 35% of the company still. And that was all to do with shareholders and share prices. They were losing a little bit of money, so they got rid of it. But the Livewire is a bike I've always wanted to ride, and always really like the look of, but I hope that comes across in the video. But first of all, before we do anything and have a look around the bike, we can have a word from our sponsor. So stick with it, kids.
Hi, my name's Milo, and before I subscribed to Tour Rider, my life was just crazy, just eating grass and weeds and just doing nothing, man, just eating grass. It's crazy. And then I subscribe, and all I do now, I just sniff and I just move it. That boy saved my life. Remember to subscribe to Tour Rider.
Right, welcome everybody. It's something a little bit different. This is a bike I've wanted to ride for a long time because I really like these. So this is I suppose we can still call it the Harley Livewire. But Livewire is sort of like a separate entity, but Harley own a large percentage of the company still. And we could get into the politics of how they farm this out to save share price and all the rest of it, but that's not that interesting. So this is a bike I've had a real keen interest in for quite some time, ever since they did the long way up, was it, or South America, being you and Charlie, and they were sort of pre-production bikes, sort of. They weren't quite prototypes, a bit more than prototypes, I think, but I always thought that was a big risk from Harley to do that. Now, I'm not going to get into all the conspiracy theories about, well, they had 57 bikes and helicopters and hotels and all that. I'm not going to get into that. But I think for them to put this very new type of bike in the early days of electric bikes into a TV program, into the media, was quite a brave thing, really. And I've always thought that. But again, that's my own personal view. And particularly to do it in the depths of winter, it seemed like, because they're in the snow, where batteries generally just don't work very well. So, yeah, and I've always had a keen interest since that time. So I thought, let's go and ride one. The thing about this bike that I really like, and the way I think they've done it, is that it's nothing new in the styling as such. They've not gone for a new age look and, Space 1999 and all that sort of stuff. It's still very familiar as a bike, and I think that was really important. I think if you went too far away from what a motorbike looks like, I think it'll take longer for people to come around. But we're in this sort of like latest generation of this bike, and there's nothing unusual in it. If I sit on the bike, it doesn't feel odd. It feels exactly like a motorbike. Now, when we think about the specs on this, and this is always the hardest thing, isn't it? It's the weight of these bikes. Now, this is running about 250 kilos. Obviously, it's not wet or dry because there's no petrol in it or there's no oil, so it's always that heavy. But it doesn't actually. It is heavy, but it doesn't feel cumbersome, really. No heavier than a full-size adventure bike, I suppose. But your weight is quite low, so even on doing it, it does feel like a, but it's not quite a pendulum. So there was no great worry when I sat on this first off. I thought, okay, you know, that's fine. The actual seating position, the pegs do feel quite back, but then this is sort of like a sports bike, because when you consider the acceleration and everything, the performance of this bike, you know, it really is a sports bike. It's not a weekend shopping bike, that's for sure. But yeah, you are a little bit weight forward on the wrists. Not so bad that I think it would cause you problems. The bike itself is pretty comfortable, but I am slightly sliding into it, so you do end up sort of cosseting the tank a little bit. But I think the overall sort of ergonomics of the bike are really nice. The bars just the right width. All the fixtures and fittings feel like good quality. They spend a lot of time on this bike getting everything sort of right. The TFT is quite small, but I'll show you around that in a second.
I think one of the interesting things about this bike is that when the Long Way Up came out and we were all sort of introduced to this bike properly, when they put all their panniers on and all the rest of it, I suppose people, well I certainly did, saw it as maybe an electric adventure bike, and I think that didn't help this bike to start with, because people thought, well, it's going to have good range and it's going to be able to do this, it's going to be able to cover all sorts of terrain, which they did in that tour. But I think it gave the wrong impression, and I think that held this bike back a little bit initially, because that's not what it is, and this bike isn't an adventure bike at all. It's really a sports bike, or sports tourer. I don't think it has a perfect category, but I see it more as a sports bike, but you have to accept that it's a very, very heavy sports bike. And I think once you see it as that, then it takes on a whole new meaning, this bike. Yes, you could put panniers on it and do that, but I think that would lose the essence of what this bike is. It really is a high performance sports bike, but that's very heavy, and that's a really difficult trick to pull off, isn't it? Because you lose the essence of what sports bikes are. You know, I suppose sports bikes are really bikes that you could take to the track. I don't think this is something you'd want to take to the track. This is more something you want to have a really lot of fun with on the road. But remembering that you've got that 260 kilos, you've got to slow down. Once you put a load of panniers and stuff on it, this really would be a bit of a heavyweight. And because of that weight, your riding style has to be attuned to it. You have to remember very quickly that although it'll accelerate very fast, you've got to slow it down. And I noticed this, is that, and although the brakes are fine, there's nothing wrong with the brakes on this bike, but you do need to prepare for bends. Knowing, particularly, you know, when I was in damp conditions early on this ride, that you do need to slow it down and know what the brakes are like, what the tyres are like. I think I mentioned that I think the tyres on this were built specifically for this bike to cope with the weight and the speed. So yeah, it's a bike you have to learn to ride. It's not a jump on and just shoot off, because you get taken aback by the acceleration of this bike and you think, wow, this is a fast sports bike. But you do need to slow it down, and that's the main thing that I came away with when I was riding this bike. And it's that weight you have to be careful of, particularly when you're going around slow corners or around mini roundabouts and stuff like that, is that it feels like it wants to fall into the roundabout, and that could be because of the weight of it, or just the way that the bike is set up, the ergonomics of it. But it's not a bad thing, it's just something you get used to.
So let's have a closer look around the bike then. So the tyres in here, they've got Michelin tyres. I would say these are probably built specifically for this bike, just to give less rolling resistance and stuff like that, but they are Michelins. I like the styling of the battery. It's very slightly BMW, isn't it? Like R80, R85, all those bikes, just without the cylinders on the side. You've got your motor on the bottom there. But the way they've designed it and put it all together, I just think that's a really cool. It looks almost like a supercharger, doesn't it, on the back front of a Bentley. the finish is really nice. You're sort of double stitching. It's a nice place to be, without a doubt. The paint finish, that's not a sticker, that's proper paint on there. Frame, lovely. I mean, there's not a join which doesn't look right on here. You know, you got the nice sort of fixings here. Suspension adjustment at the back for preload and damping. You got the these showers on here, as you'd expect really for a bike of this price. Obviously it's belt drive, so you know, Harley no belts, so no issue there. I think if you had a chain drive, I think you'd hear it on this bike. The dash, right, I've got to remember the sequence now. Alright, hang on. Yep. So there's your dash on there. So you get all the warning lights, and when you're ready to go, you press that, and then eventually it'll go green. He says. Well, it will do once the side stands up anyway. But that's how that functions on there. So, quite interesting with Harleys, you've got the indicators, which is independent, so you've got left and right, where most bikes obviously we've got it on there. And that's quite a common trait with Harleys, but they're self-cancelling, which they do work as well. You've got a little live wire line on there. You've got Bluetooth connectivity with this, as you can imagine. You can connect it to your phone, all the rest of it. But you know, it's just a nice looking thing, and I like the colour. It's cool. Obviously got Brembos on the front. We got disc on the back with Brembos obviously as well. So yeah, good looking bit of kit. And it is Harley. You can sort of see the Harley in it. That's what I like. I like these as well. I like these air intakes. They're cool. That's really cool. I like that. It's a bit like the old Yummy VMAX, isn't it? I like, which I've always liked. But yeah, great looking bike.
What I found quite funny riding this bike through the little villages was it suddenly dawned on me that if all bikes, sports bikes, were electric, would we have the current raft of speed restrictions put on everything? You know, we got the issue in Wales and with the 20-mile-an-hour limits, and I know it's important to be safe, and I don't condone speeding at all. Not doing the job I do anyway, but it's the perception, isn't it? It's that the screaming of the motorbikes on a Sunday morning going through, certainly where I live, you know, it's like a Grand Prix track, but you don't necessarily know that those bikes are going that fast. You perceive that they're going that fast because of the noise that's being made. If you all had electric bikes, or sports bikes were electric, no one would notice, would they? And they're not saying nobody should know that you're not speeding, but it's that thing of, it's that perception, oh, those bikes are screaming down the road, they must be doing 100 mile an hour. But if you didn't hear it, it's like out of earshot, out of mind, isn't it? Sort of. And it's that thing, it doesn't cause any aggravation to anybody. It's the noise that aggravates, not necessarily the speed so much, I think. You know, speeding is speeding, whatever you do, whether you do it in a car or on a motorbike, and that's dangerous. And we see the fools on a Sunday, you know, scooting past cars when they shouldn't do and all the rest of it, you know, risking their lives and other people's, but that's another story. But the noise, if you take the noise aspect out of it, would there be such an issue? And I think probably not. It might be something people might want to comment on, but yeah, the speed of this bike, the acceleration that you can generate on this bike is incredible. You know, they quote a 0 to 60 time of 3 seconds. An R1 is 2.7, so you can have all the acceleration without the noise. It's fantastic. And you know, you'll see that the acceleration here, I do a 40 to 60 in a second. Well, it's less than a second, but you know what I mean, coming up in a second or two. But the acceleration is fantastic, but there's no drama. The front wheel doesn't want to come up. It just accelerates because it's so controlled. The acceleration is so fast that you can barely see the speedo. Even the speedo can't keep up with it. It doesn't seem to. You'll see in a sec. Here we go. mind-boggling. The thing that I noticed about this bike is that you can use all of the power. Because it's so heavy, even though you open the throttle right up and you disappear into the distance, the wheel doesn't want to come up. It's incredibly stable, which was the complete opposite to the GSX 8S that I rode, where you couldn't use it all because the front wheel kept wanting to come up into the air, which was very odd, but this is great. I was going to stop and have a coffee at this point. I thought, oh, I'll have a nice cup of coffee, because there's a little coffee store here, which I then realised wasn't there today. And so I decided to go back and have another experience of that fantastic acceleration. But what I found really interesting with this bike, the acceleration is it's not fierce, but it's so good that overtakes were really safe. And to be able to make progress on this was easy. And you'll see as I get now this is quite a steep hill, this road, and remember you're pushing along a 250 kilo bike with me on it, 16.5 stone, and also it's belt driven, so if that tells you how good belts are compared to chains, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. It's a difficult word to say that, isn't it? The other thing to note, I think, was the range on this bike. Now, this bike had 112 miles on it, range, when I left. And, I did whiz around for quite a while that day. And I was only just under 100 miles by the time I finished. So, if you're driving carefully, I think the range would be quite good. And you got that regen as you come off the brakes, and as I said before, the engine braking is fantastic on this bike. It's really good because of that regen, and it's a big motor, and so and I like engine braking, as you know, I've said many times in my other videos. But the power is unquestionable. The handling, you just have to get used to a little bit, really.
So let's look at those performance stats then. So they give a 0 to 60 time of 3 seconds, which is as fast as anything, really. But the power output is not that high. It doesn't seem to be that high. We're around 100 horsepower, about 80 foot-pounds of torque, or 80 newton meters of torque. So, it's not there. But electric motors, the power is so instant, and that's what you find with this bike. The power is instant. So, did I think this was is it never meet your heroes? I'm not saying this is my hero, but do you know what I mean? I'm really glad I rode this bike. I really like it. Now, price-wise, it's 23,000, I think. That's on the road. You've got battery charge times. If you've got a fast charger, you're looking full power in 60 minutes, which is pretty good. And I think you've got 80% of the power in about 40 minutes. So that's quite quick. If you're going somewhere where they've got a fast charger, your range is going to be around, they say in the urban environment, about 150 miles. I think it's more going to be like 100, 110 miles. Motorways, it doesn't like motorways really. The engine is really spooling up at motorway speeds, so you're using a lot of energy there. Now, it does have a regen on the brake system and stuff like that, which is great for engine braking, which is really nice. It doesn't, when you drop off the throttle, it doesn't just go flying off. The regen does help that, so that's really nice. So it's like going through your gearbox, really. And I like engine braking. I think it's really, really important because it's such more stable type of stopping. So really nice in that respect. In terms of would I buy one, I think if we're with the way we're going, this bike is now in its sort of present incarnation is pretty sorted. I know we haven't got a huge range on it, but if you're commuting to work or you live in a really nice sunny country, then this is fantastic. I think it would be a really interesting way to go. Yes, it's quite a big price tag, but what isn't these days, really? It's electric or small capacity, isn't it? This can go into the centre of London, no problem. They're almost paying you to take it into London. It's so good in that. So great as a commute. I think if you're working in London and you're living on the outskirts, sort of Dorking, those sort of areas, then this is fantastic. If we get nice weather. So I hope you'd like that little look at the Livewire. I think it is a really nice bike, and glad that I got to ride it.
Right, I'm going to take this bike back. This is going to be the quietest exit of any high performance sports bike you've ever heard. It's a bit like pulling away in an underground train or a golf cart without having to avoid fare dodgers and golf balls. And if I was travelling to London, I think this would be a far more enjoyable way to go, wouldn't you? Particularly on a nice day. So if you get a chance to try out one of the Livewires, I can highly recommend it. There's a bit of an issue around the Harley dealers with Livewire, so you need to get in there quick, I think. So remember to keep an eye out on the channel. We've got some more bikes coming up and bits and pieces on the Hunter and stuff like that. And ride safe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everyone.